Welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear. I am the musician, author, and talk show host of tonight's 30-minute show where we get to dive into deep topics, usually related to grief, but not always, that help us address our own wounds as well as learn how to help other people in situations we don't understand. If you are watching us live or as a replay, Susan, our amazing guest, and I want to hear from you tonight. So in that comment section, wherever it is for you on your screen, send us a hello. Let us know where you're calling in from. We absolutely will go through all the comments later and kind of keep our eye on it while we're going live. Just a quick reminder for everybody. Last week, I had this amazing trip. Lots of highs, lots of lows, but I did my show from my phone. So if you were wondering, Mickey, where is my weekly resource email? You usually send it out every week. You're not crazy. You didn't miss it. I had the hardest time downloading the video from Facebook and uploading it to YouTube. So just know the weekly resource email that you will get this week is going to have the notes from this show, the resources from this show, plus the ones from last week. And if you're wondering, what is this weekly resource email you talk of? Head to my website, wherever again that is, it's in the comment section for you, and make sure you're signed up. Not only will you get all the notes, all the contacts, all the organizations that I'm partnering with to put this show on, but you'll also hear when I release new music, new cards, new books, and everything else. So make sure you head there. And then the last little thing that I have that's kind of new, I'm not sure if you got your copy yet, is if you're on my email list, me and my dear friend, a great mentor of mine, David Brook, who's that gratitude guy out of Seattle, we created this because suicide and mental health really plays into both of our family stories a lot. And we wanted to just put something together that in this crazy time, how can we all do better at making sure our mental health is healthy and that we're able to recognize, hey, I'm doing everything right and there's still a problem, and encouraging people to go to the doctor, the counselor. I go to the counselor. I really believe in it. So I want you guys to have this, and it's a little workbook. It's my gift to you. It's included with this weekly resource email. So if you're not on the list, make sure you head on over there because there's a lot of goodies that I don't want you to miss out on. And before I dive into our one, our only amazing death doula, the only one I know, the only one I want to know, I wanted to share a little bit more about my story and kind of getting us ready. And if you know me from various spots, say, hey, I know Mickey from here. I know Mickey from there. It's always fun to see how we're all interconnected. And if you met me online through Facebook, I want to hear that too, because that's awesome. So my mom passed away when I was 13 from cancer. And her mom, who was a very maternal figure to me, passed away just over a year ago. When I was 13 is when my mom passed away. I spent the better part of a decade pretending I was fine, trying to be strong and insisting that I was okay. Eventually, as I'm sure you can imagine, that didn't end well. Everything around me was crumbling, and I knew I needed to get help. After a lot of counseling and a lot of reading, I realized as a culture, we're not good at feeling our emotions. And tonight's conversation is spot on that. Sometimes death happens and it just happens and you do not get to say goodbye. Other times, like in my mom's situation, if you've heard my show enough, we maybe know it's coming, but we don't acknowledge it mentally that it's coming, and it still feels sudden in that moment. Other times, and this is what we're going to talk about tonight, because this is actually pretty common, we know it's coming, and they got the diagnosis. They are on hospice. Things are not going well. And it's not to say you don't pray and you don't hope, but the writing's on the wall. When that happens, we have a decision to make. Do we lean into our emotions and have those hard goodbye conversations, or do we keep busy? It's really easy to keep very, very busy when you're avoiding feeling because there's a lot to do around that time. So people can distract themselves. So if you are brave enough to lean in and have those hard conversations, the follow-up to that is, well, then what do I do? Like, maybe I want to have them, but I'm not sure what to say. So that's where we get to bring on the one and the only death doula, Susan Lawrence, to help us out with that conversation. Susan, welcome to The Healing Half.
Thank you so much, Mickey. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, it is so good to see you. For those of you guys who don't know, Susan was one of my very first investors in the show with her company that I'll let her talk all about. And that just really made my day. So Susan, you have been so special to me since basically day one, and you believed in this show. And I am just so grateful for you. So I can't wait for everybody to get to know a little bit more about what you do as a death doula. We know what birth doula is, but what's a death doula?
Well, death doulas started off from the birth doula movement. So the man that I trained under with Imelda knew a birth doula, and he was a social worker with hospice, and he realized this can work at end of life as well. So he created some training programs. Since then, there's been a lot of training programs, but death doulas are also called end of life doulas, death coaches, death midwives. There's a lot of names for what we do. A lot of times it's just helping people walk gently through the whole process. Sometimes it's helping the patient and the family. I like to get to know a family ahead of time, get to know the dying person ahead of time, so we can work on maybe some legacy work like you talked about last week. You know, the legacy work, that was excellent. Kind of a good lead in, and you didn't even realize it. We're very skilled in knowing signs and symptoms of active dying, so we can be there to, bring calmness, whatever. We do a lot of education. Something else that I like to do is help patients and their families set a vigil plan. And a vigil plan actually helps you clarify your thoughts and feelings, how you want your room, your home, wherever you are, to look and feel and smell in those last days. So maybe we move the bed by the window. Maybe we do essential oils. Maybe we monitor how many guests you're having. Maybe we set up little readings or little rituals or those kinds of things. So a vigil plan is just honoring your wishes. So that's something that I really enjoy doing. And then sitting vigil, and that's that active dying time. And that can be very scary for families. So I'm also a volunteer with hospice. So I sit with a lot of people in those last hours. Lots of emotions. Families are scared. Families don't know what to do. And as I sat with a friend in the ICU years and years ago as he was dying, I sent his new bride home to take a nap. And I realized what a sacred place it was to be trusted to sit at the bedside of someone who's dying. So that kind of led to my finding my spot as a death doula. So that's how I got there.
Well, your heart shines through, and obviously tonight's topic is right up the pipe. Like, this is your jam. And as weird as that is to say, like, you've done this a lot and you've been through it. And so, just for everybody on the call, which is so great to see all of you, just let me know in the comments section, have you ever lost somebody, just a yes or a no, that you knew it was coming? Just, it could be a close person. It could be someone maybe a little out of your target range, but do you know somebody? Have you ever lost somebody? I would love to just know what you guys in the chat are feeling, whether you're watching it live or as a replay. But for those of you who don't know, my mom was on hospice for like 2 hours. And so that we got to the hospital, we thought we'd have a lot more time, which is part of the story. We didn't really get to say goodbye because we thought we'd have couple days, maybe a week. And within an hour or two, they're like, girls, get upstairs. Like, it's happening. And so I just am so grateful for people like you who are in those moments with like the families at their lowest point. And of course, we're hoping to talk like a couple days before that point. So thank you again for all of it. It just means so much to me and my family and all the people that have gentle souls helping them in those worst moments. So in your experience, I didn't get to say goodbye. I probably actively chose to like not do it. Hindsight, I wish I would have. I wish I would have kicked everybody out of the room. But let's say I got into that room and I had my time. What do you recommend people do? And so it's kind of a big goodbye.
It is a big goodbye. And we bring a lot to that bedside. We bring good energy, we bring not so good energy, but maybe you didn't have a good relationship with that person and you're bringing that there. And maybe you want to unload. Maybe that's not the right time to do it. You have to wonder, is this going to be helpful for you and for them? So if you're bringing in that old baggage, I think the other thing to do is that's your time to say the things you want to say. And maybe you weren't a family that could say, I love you and this and this. Maybe you're not that kind of family, but maybe you can do it at the bedside when you know you're running out of time to do it. I think that's important. I think one of the things, we're afraid to talk to people and maybe bring up things that could be sensitive or whatever. And you just have to decide, is this going to be helpful for you in your grieving process? Is it going to be, is that the right time to do it? I guess that's, it's unfinished business is hard to do, and dying is very messy business. So we bring to it a lot of baggage, I guess. So my advice is just, you sit with the person, and sometimes you don't even have to say a thing. We want to do things. We want to make the tater tot hot dish, and we want to clean the house, and we want to do all those things. Sitting with someone at their bedside, sometimes you just need to sit with them, and your presence is the biggest thing. So not always do you have to go through this litany of all kinds of conversation either. Sometimes just your presence is the biggest thing you can bring to the bedside.
That's awesome. And I was kind of wondering, and I know this is a little bit of a curveball question, but you made me think of it.
Okay.
Could you give an example of someone who was hesitant to say goodbye, but then they were happy that they did? And maybe kind of like walk us through how you maybe convinced them to like, no, you're going to regret not saying goodbye, and perhaps what they said that made them feel just that weight off their shoulder.
Well, I would tell you, I got called to the bedside, and I thought this person was dying quickly. It was hours and hours, but his daughter was so distraught and didn't know how she could go on, and everything was scary and big and everything else. So what I did was I asked her about some of her favorite memories. And pretty soon she was having her hand on her dad, and she was talking to him and kind of laughing and reliving little stories. And it just kind of broke that tension. And it's okay to laugh at the bedside. It's okay to cry, but it's okay to laugh and to bring up the fun stuff. And she had taken this as this very horrible moment. Oh my God, my dad's dying and I don't know how to do this. And we flipped it around. And all of a sudden, she was savoring all these fun memories of the family vacations they used to take. And she talked about the car, all those kinds of things. So we were just able to turn that around for her. And by the time I left about 6 hours later, she was calm. She was feeling much better. So I think that was helpful. There was somebody else. I was there when her dad died, and she didn't think she could even take a breath. And I just stayed there till the funeral home came. She didn't want to be alone with him. Before he left, she was taking pictures with him. I took pictures for her, but it's just taking some time, take a breath. And something to remember is death is not an emergency. So once someone dies, you can take time then even to have those words with them. So I think we always panic and we think we have to call the funeral home immediately or call hospice immediately. And that's not the case. You can sit there with them. You can take that time. Once the funeral home comes, you might not see them again, depending on what kind of funeral services you're going to have. So take the time. And maybe that's when you do that. And maybe you just eventually start a journal. Maybe that's where you get through some of those things. I also suggest to people to keep a little journal or some notes at the bedside. Their loved ones are going to say things that might mean nothing today. And in a few months down the road, when you're not so worried about all these other little details happening, you can go, oh, that's what it meant. For instance, it's not unusual for people as they cross from this world to the next to see people from their past that have died years and years ago. Yeah. So you might be sitting at the bedside and kind of get a little scared because they're talking to their great grandma that died 50 years ago, or their pet that died or whatever. But that's really the way to look at it, is it's a gift to you because they're letting you know they're not alone. Yeah. So I say, keep those little notes, like mom talked to so-and-so, or, those kinds of things. And you can go back and look at those later. and they can be really calming, and they can really help you through your grief. But there's too many things going on right now at the bedside. So if you can just make little notes and like, mom said she saw great grandma Rosie or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh, that makes sense a couple of months later when you think about it. But I always think that is such a gift for us to know they're not on that journey all by themselves. Typically, there's people waiting for them, and they're, we're on this side, but there's other people on the other side. They're not alone.
Yeah, amen. When my mom was dying, one night, me and my Aunt Gail were in the hospital room, and I didn't want to leave her side. At that point, I knew it was happening, but she was pretty far gone. So we didn't get like these good conversations, which was hard. But she woke up in the middle of the night and talked about this party that everybody was there. And she just kept saying, like, everyone was there. And it was really sweet. But I don't remember it that well. Like, I remember it, but me and my aunt she remembers parts and I remember parts. And so I wish I would have maybe right afterwards, like, this is exactly what she said. Right. So that is so precious. And you mentioned pets. So I just want to zippity-doo. That, can you tell us a little bit? I know that's part of your work, which is so funny and in a great way. How do pets fit into all this?
Well, you have pets, and I'm a new puppy owner. Well, for the last year, pets are very intuitive, and they know something is happening. When I worked for a hospice years and years ago, there was a man that was dying, and his dog crawled up on the bed with him, and they kind of had their own moment together. And I'm not sure if I remember the story right, but he either died right after the owner died, or he went to the door and he watched as the funeral home drove away with him. That pet knew. He knew he wasn't coming back. And, but they're very intuitive. They're also so comforting. I'll sit for the longest time with my puppy on my lap. How soothing is that? But she knows when things aren't going well. So I think we have to let them be a part of the process. We have to let them, we have to know they're going to grieve as well. They're losing somebody, so I think it's a good idea to include them. It's also a good idea to include them in an advanced care directive. If you're surviving and there's nobody else who is going to take care of your pets, you need to address that as well in an advanced care directive, because you might not have anybody lined up, and what is going to happen.
That's beautiful. Yeah, just to think if the person dying has a pet, to be just extra cognizant. You're probably not thinking of Sparky back home. You're just like, did somebody let him out? Good. And then like focus in there. But like to remember, like that person probably wants to say goodbye and the pet needs to say goodbye. So I think that's just beautiful. And I know that the title of tonight's show is Emotionally Preparing for Goodbye. And that's a huge question. But in the days or weeks leading up to it, we kind of talked about caregivers a little bit before we went live. How do people face the music? What do you kind of help walk them through? Because I'm a queen of denial, hence my 10-year testimony. I wouldn't believe the sky is blue at that point if you told me. It was just like, nope, I'm fine. So for people who are a little like more ready to feel than I was back at 13, how do you accept it and get ready for that?
There's a man by the name of Frank Ostaseski, and he wrote a few amazing books, I guess. And he's a speaker, he's Buddhist, he's whatever. And I heard him speak a couple of years ago, and he talked about embracing impermanence, so lack of permanence. And the sooner we get that, and I think it's a Buddhist belief, the sooner we understand everything's going to go eventually. So think of this beautiful vase like I've got on my mantle. It's beautiful and nothing should ever happen to it. And it's a treasure. But one day it's going to fall and drop on the floor and it's gone. But the sooner I realize it's not there forever, it's there for me to appreciate now, for me to enjoy, but I know it's going to be gone. And for us to understand that that's the same thing with the people in our lives. So prior to finding out they're dying, we need to treat them that way. They're not going to be here forever. We need to take care of those unfinished business things then. But preparing for it, a lot of times it's just some of that internal work that you have to do too. It's like, what are my feelings about this? And, am I still mad at my sibling because of, whatever, those kinds of things. Those are things to work out before you need to. But a lot of times it's just sitting there, it's writing letters, putting their picture in front of you, having a little altar and having conversations with them even after the fact if you didn't get a chance to. But a lot of it is just preparing those relationships ahead of time. There's a great book called The 4 Things That Matter Most. I'm sorry. I forgive you. I love you. The biggest one is goodbye.
Ooh, ouch. That's hard to hear.
No.
Wow.
But if we can walk through those, I'm sorry to you, and yes, I forgive. And sometimes that's really hard for people too, because it's like, no, you hurt me and I'm not letting go of that. And I'm not going to let you get off this easily just because you're on your deathbed kind of thing. Well, that's not going to help. Got to think long term here. And last week you talked so much about leaning in. It's leaning into this. It's embracing this. And the other thing is, like I said at the beginning, this is messy work. But grieving, you just got to do it. That's part of it. You have to sit with it. You have to soak it in. It wasn't meant to be easy. It's hard work. But if we know that leaning into it and spending that time with it, and then we treasure those relationships we have and, that kind of thing. So I just think I try really hard to not live with regrets. I have a lot. I try really hard to not have them because I don't want someone to be at their deathbed or me be there and then go, oh, wait a minute, I have to fix all this stuff. That's the wrong time to try and do it. So I think we just need to try and live without regrets.
Yes. And yes, what a great little incentive. I think all you have to do is lose one person close to you and kind of regret something to learn that lesson pretty hard.
Exactly.
But I love what you said about those 4 things. And for everybody watching, if you're not on my email list yet, head to mickyspear.com because all of Susan's notes are going to be there. And I will have the links to those books she's talking about. But I think just that alone at the deathbed could be a great framework. If you go through those 4 things and just be like, you don't know what to say. Well, let's start here. I love you. I forgive you. Goodbye. And
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
And goodbye.
I'm sorry. And goodbye.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful tapestry to start with. And then you can fill that tapestry in, like you said, with childhood memories. This is such good information, Susan. I am eating this up. Everything you say is just pure wisdom. I am so blessed by you. And you kind of talk a lot about like the bedside. Some of the stuff you said, journaling, processing, leaning in, you can do that anytime. But this kind of leads us to it's 2021, 2020. Obviously, we're in a pandemic. And even though not all the losses that happened last year were COVID related, a lot were. And a lot of people, my own family, to so many people were not either able to see somebody on their deathbed or have a funeral kind of within like a normal time frame. So for people who are not able, whether it's distance or COVID, for whatever reason, to be with their loved one, but we know they're dying and maybe someone's got like a FaceTime or something that they could do it. That's just a big topic right now. And what advice do you have surrounding that?
Well, and it was big this past year, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. And how many nurses have had to hold phones to people's ears for you to say your goodbyes? Some of it, you're going to have anxiety about it. You can't get to their bedside or whatever. And what we tell people, I'm with the Minnesota Death Collaborative as well. And we've done a frequently asked questions on living, loving, and dying during COVID-19. And one of the suggestions is, put your hand over your heart and breathe in for 5 counts and breathe out and think of 5 ways that you feel safe right now. And that kind of helps to take the temperature down of the anxiety. Like I feel safe because of all these things. That's all a good thing. Then if you can't be with them physically, create a special place in your home. Like I have a spot here where I've got some special stones, pictures, candles, whatever. Create like a little altar and sit with them. Sit with them
Mm.
right there. They're physically not going to be there, but sit with them. You can be there. Put their picture up on your dining room table and have coffee with them every morning, or set a place for them at your table. Or the fact remains, we're not going to be at the bedside for a lot of these people, a lot of our loved ones, and we have to find ways to do it. So we do it when they're gone. We just do it
Mm.
in the ways that make sense. My daughter lost a very dear friend. They met at a really special place. After he died, I said, you know what? You should go there and bring the picnic lunch that he made when you met, and go there and have a picnic in his honor. She said, I never thought of that. That's those kinds of things that you can do. Um, I think it's important just to recognize them, but it's okay to have that place at the dinner table and spend time with them, even though they're not there. I've got some other notes. Write letters to them, and do a Zoom call with your family and cook their favorite meal, or go to their favorite
Mm.
restaurant and tip their favorite server just wildly and let them know it was in their honor. Those kinds of things. But wear their favorite color, or on their birthday, do something special with your family, those kinds of things. Those all help to ease that heartache. But again, grief is not meant to be easy. And we have to
Mm.
learn, like you said last week, to lean into it and not run from it. And you spent some time running and you found that doesn't work.
Right. Oh, Susan, that's
So
amazing because I
leaning
know
in.
people I've talked to who have people in nursing homes and they like I can't go see them. They're dying. This isn't fair. This isn't right. And I think there's this belief out there that if I don't get to say goodbye in person, it doesn't count or it's not as good if I was able to be there. Do you mind kind of just talking to that and kind of maybe saying, well, I don't know, whatever you would say to somebody who's like, well, I didn't get to say goodbye to grandma and my cousin did, and that's not fair. And my goodbye doesn't mean anything because grandma didn't hear it or anything like that.
Well, my grandpa was 97 and dying. He had cancer, but he was 97, and he knew vaguely when I was coming to visit him, and he died when my plane was landing. And I was ticked off. But you know what? He didn't want us there either. So I've had to find ways to make that right. It's hard. But I would just say, find ways to embrace that person or find that
Mm.
special place, because COVID's not going away anytime soon. We're not going to be able to be at the bedside anyway. So we need to understand that. Funeral homes are having to learn how to do things differently. Zoom funerals. Who thought of having a Zoom funeral? Those kinds of things. We're just having to be creative. And I think a lot of it has to do with just finding where that special place is and going through the process, even though they're physically not there. That's also something to think about too. If you're at the bedside and maybe you've been there for days and you step out for 15 minutes to get a breath of fresh air and walk around the block, and they choose that moment to die, you know what? I've been here for days. You couldn't do that. They maybe didn't want you there anyway. They needed to do it by themselves. Or
Mm.
maybe they're going to wait for you to get there after, traveling 900 miles or whatever. But, people go when it's their time to go. And as far as grieving goes, there's no right answers. Again, it's messy. You have to be in it, but understand that there's nothing to fix. You're
Mm.
not wrong because you're grieving for a day or 2 years. There's nothing to fix. You just have to go through it and spend the time doing the work. That's hard. But just take your time and just know it wasn't meant to be a walk in the park. If it was, it wouldn't be grief.
Oh, that's
So
beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Susan. And I think to that, like, just like you said, just because you can't say goodbye in person doesn't mean your goodbye is any less special.
exactly,
If you say goodbye after they passed away, they're with you.
they are.
And also, I would say too, and this could go for somebody who didn't get to say goodbye, maybe because it was a sudden death, right? Car accident,
It
anything.
happens.
It's like you don't get to say goodbye. And I think the thing, like those people, myself included, because I've lost a lot of people suddenly too, that brought me a lot of comfort in that moment was one goodbye they know that you love them. They knew. Exactly. Even if you guys were in a fight, they knew that you loved them, and they know now that you love them, and that one goodbye isn't perhaps as miraculously closure as you think it would be. And you can have that closure outside of that. I say a lot of people get kind of mad because they're like, it's not fair, I didn't get to say goodbye. And it's like, yes, that is awful, and it's okay to be angry. Yeah. But I would say too, you don't want a goodbye. You want them to stick around. You don't want a 5-minute conversation. You want them back. Right. And having them back is not what that 5-minute conversation is going to do. And I think we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes. Exactly. But you have a poem for us to read. I am going to post it in the chat as we're running right up on our time here. So we're going to read this beautiful poem. I think it's just lovely. And I'll let you kind of intro it and do that too.
Great. Well, Jan Richardson is a new author that I'm just getting familiar with. And I came across this poem. It's called Blessing for the Brokenhearted. And she actually quotes Henry David Thoreau at the beginning of it and says, there's no remedy for love but to love more. So we got to think about that. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made precisely for this. As if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, and as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still. As if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless.
That's beautiful.
And we are brokenhearted when we lose our loved ones. It's hard, but we all need to be gentle with ourselves and let us process it in our own time.
Oh, that's a beautiful poem. What did you guys think? Did you like the poem? I sure loved it. And you guys know I'm a musician. I love words. So I thought that was just so beautiful. So I'm going to jump off the screen and let you share a little bit about what you do, how people can get in touch with you, and why they should get in touch with you. And sneak peek, everyone, you should.
Okay. As a death doula, there's a lot of things that I do. I do non-medical support. I have medical background, but it's non-medical support. I help patients with life review, so I can help them do maybe a legacy project. So life review, we kind of talk about what's important to them and their values, maybe write some letters or create a project, those kinds of things. The vigil planning that I touched on a little earlier, I think is really important. So everyone, as they gather around, can honor what the person wanted. Reprocessing after death. I tell the story of something that I witnessed the day before a man died, and I was able to tell his wife later, and she was very touched. Didn't realize this had happened, but I had different eyes that were able to see other things. So that was all good. So I help with reprocessing. I can do grief referrals. I also help with completing advanced care directives. And when to call a doula. I'm working with a couple right now just to do their advanced care planning and funeral arrangements. Maybe it's after a diagnosis and you're not ready for hospice yet. Perfect time for having a doula work with you. It can be the bridge between that diagnosis and calling hospice, those kinds of things. When you're on hospice, you can't be having curative measures. You can with a doula. And when you're close to death, sometimes people call me just to be there for those last hours to offer some support. I sat with a woman one time whose 2 grown sons were afraid to be alone with her. So I was there. And in July, we played Christmas songs because that was her favorite music. So that helped her sons say goodbye as well. So decades ago, Grandma died in the parlor and we did this. So it's my job to help you know that your soul knows how to do this. But I'm there to walk with you to do it. You can find me at adestellc.com. I have a Facebook page under the same name as well. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I do those initial consultations all the time, so please feel free to call me. Mickey's got all my contact information.
Oh, Thank you so much, Susan. We are so grateful for you. Everybody say goodbye and thank you to Susan. We are so, I mean, who else? Who else has seen so many people from one world to the next? Thank you. We are so grateful for you, for your wisdom. And just like she said, her contact info is not only in the chat, but it's also going to be in my weekly resource email. We talked so much about her wisdom. I'm still boggled by it. It's so great. So if you have not got on this email list, please do. And while you're there, don't forget, we talked a lot about processing grief tonight. My Heart Still Remembers is my personal book that I wrote. It's 3 phases. We talked legacy last week. That's phase 2. So if you want some help walking through your grief and leaning in, take it from somebody who's really bad at leaning in and had to learn how to do it. This book is easy. It's step by step, and it's going to help guide you through a chapter that I really think we all need to lean in more, and this would probably be after somebody passes away. But Susan, we are so grateful for your wisdom. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody watching, thank you for being here too. I am putting a link in the comments. If you like the show, Google has this thing that you can review Mickey Spear, which is me and my book and my music. If you want to write a review, I would be honored. That would be great. If not, no worries. It's just another way for people to find the show a little bit easier. And as you guys know, that's my passion, is getting in front of people. From a couple of you, I see your names. It's so good to see you. We met through Facebook, and that only happened through exposure. So my goal is just to meet more people, have more great guests like Susan on, and just help the world, as we said before, listen to their own grief and heal it. And not only that, learn how we can help others. And I'm thinking a lot of us are going to know people who have parents or as whoever on their deathbed, and we're going to be able to share wisdom that we learned tonight with them. And man, that's the best part. So thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget to share the show if you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next week, and get your copy of My Heart Still Remembers and all of Susan's contact information on my website. Thanks, you guys.